The following is a presentation of Main Street Media, your source for news, sports, and information on Main Street in Middle Tennessee.
Welcome into a Wild and Wacky Wednesday edition of Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. I'm Chris Yao. Mo Patton to my right. I guess he's to your left if you're watching this on TV.
Over there.
He's over there.
Here, yeah.
That's Mo right there, in case you were wondering. And that's the Bear, Coach Bryant. We'll talk about him a little bit later. We've got a great show lined up for you, and I'm looking very much forward to it. It is Wild and Wacky Wednesday, though. That means we're going to give you the weirdest and wildest news from across the world and Florida a little bit later.
Not necessarily in that order.
Not necessarily. Probably Florida first. It's always fun just to start there. Of course, you can
start
only go,
there.
You can only go
stay
down.
there. Yeah,
you can only go down if you leave.
Well, you kind of set the bar pretty high when you start in Florida.
No doubt. So we'll get to all that a little bit later as well. We've got two great guests. Of course, if you watch the title card there, we've got Heather Williams, who will join us and talk NASCAR as she does each and every Wednesday. Championship 4 on Sunday this week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Also, we've got David Ubben, senior writer for The Athletic, covering college football. Of course, last night the college football playoff rankings were released, and we'll react to that. We'll also get his reaction as well, as the Tennessee Volunteers are el numero uno, number one in the country. Pretty crazy if you really think about it. So yeah.
Well, if you were around 2 years ago,
you'd have told me this
when Rocky Top was at rock bottom.
If you had told me this 13 months ago, I would have laughed in your face. If you just said 1 year from this day, Tennessee's going to be the number one team in the country.
These are the 2021 college football playoff rankings, the first ones. When next year's come out, UT is going to be number one.
Well, let me tell you, I would have cried laughing in your face. I would have said
horse laugh,
absolute nut,
just horse laugh. Yeah, wouldn't be able to stop you.
There's a guy in a Facebook group that I'm in named Justin Pike, and I don't know if that's his real name or not, but he has been the Facebook group is called College Football Frenzy, and from day one of this season, he has been predicting Tennessee to be in the college football playoff, and I've been in every comment being like, "You're an idiot, you're an idiot."
This year,
there's no way. Yeah. Up until about 3 weeks ago, and then I stopped commenting.
and hoping he wasn't keeping receipts, right?
Oh man. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, so we're gonna get deep into it a little bit later, and much more. We've also got
as we get deep into it, I want to, in case this question isn't already on your radar, think about this. What at this point does it take for UT to not be in the playoffs?
I think that's a major question that we'll have to talk about, because I think there's some things that can happen, but yeah,
they're pretty far fetched.
I asked this 2 weeks ago. Mo, I said 2 weeks ago that they beat Kentucky and they're almost a shoe-in. And
I think it was with West Rucker where we were talking that was pretty much the game that they had to win
90%,
and they won it.
So also Auburn, there's some names popping up in the Auburn search,
and some of them make no sense.
Some of them make no sense. Some of them are interesting. One of them is obvious, and he didn't say no when asked about it. So there's that.
Well, anyway. Why would you, whoever it is? But
that's Lane Kiffin. They asked him, "Are you interested?" He's like, we don't really talk about that kind of stuff during the season.
Ooh, that went over well in Oxford.
That's not a no.
No, it's
Well,
not.
it could have been worse. He could have said Pine Box. So the last guy who said I'm absolutely not leaving left. So
Yeah.
maybe not a no is the best possible answer you can give at Oxford. I don't know.
You know, the last guy that went from Ole Miss to Auburn,
Did pretty well.
yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, heck, you go from college football to senator. That's and probably would have been governor had he ran
Oh,
6 years ago.
yet, I don't guess, but yeah.
Well, why would you go be governor if you're a senator? Shoot, it's a lot easier up there. Shoot.
It's very odd. Anyway,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We've got a lot to get to. In fact, we've got a great top story that just talk about odd and wild. We'll start with wild and wacky. Yes, we will. But before we do that, we're going to give you yesterday's results and today's schedule on the rundown.
This is the rundown.
in Major League Baseball action last night, Lance McCullers tipping pitches, maybe not, but the Phillies hit 5 home runs in a 7-0 win over the Astros to take a 2-1 lead in the World Series. What have we done here? In college football action, Ball State defeated Kent State 27-20, and Ohio defeated Buffalo 45-24. Women's basketball action, it was MTSU in an exhibition game defeating UT Southern 114-43, and Murray State with a 71-36 win over Bethel. Also in National Hockey League play, I use that term loosely, the Edmonton Oilers destroyed the Predators. It was finally 7-4, but I think it was 5-1 at one point, right? Yeah, so Preds aren't playing very well right now.
Not for long, though. It got to 5-2 really quick after the 5-1.
Oh, did it? Okay.
It was like 3 minutes later, but it was still 5-1.
Well, good. I'm glad that there was some improvement there. But at any rate.
It is not good. Today's schedule, NBA action, the Grizzlies are at the Trailblazers. They'll just play one this time around. 9 o'clock tonight, tip on Valley Sports Southeast. Men's basketball action, Fisk out of Nashville. If you are not aware of Fisk University, you should be.
Well, considering they're coached by Kenny Anderson.
I mean, this is going to be an interesting ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Fisk is going up to Austin P for a 7 p.m. tip, ESPN Plus. We played Fisk when I was at Huntington, and it was fun. We came up here. It's the only time in my life that I ever had White Castle, and it was that White Castle right there off the DeMunbrian exit. Terrible. Absolutely terrible.
I'm sorry.
Major League Baseball action tonight. Game 4, Astros at Phillies. Again, the Phillies lead this series 2-1. That'll be a first pitch at 7:03 on Fox. College football action tonight. More action for your viewing pleasure. 6 o'clock kickoffs on ESPNU and ESPN2. On the U, it's Central Michigan at Northern Illinois, and Bowling Green hosts Western Michigan on the Deuce. And that is today's rundown. Mo, today's top story comes from the National Football League. It's the opening kickoff here on Main Street Sports today, as Daniel Snyder has hired Bank of America's securities team to explore selling the Washington football team, also known as the Commanders. Are you surprised?
I am, because I felt like this would be a kicking and screaming type scenario that would bring this about. And I don't know if somebody just got in his ear that he would listen to, or how this has come about, but I did not think Daniel Snyder would willingly cede ownership of the Washington football team. And I mean, I don't know. It seems to be some question as to whether this is going to be a piece of the team, or pieces of the team, or the entire team that's being sold. So through a team statement, I'm reading off CNN, through a team statement on Wednesday, Snyder and his wife Tanya announced that they have hired Bank of America Securities to consider potential transactions.
Basically, if anybody's out there, contact them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be interested to see how much people think it's worth.
Whatever it's worth, it will be worth more when somebody else owns it.
Well, that's probably not untrue.
The Snyders remain committed to the team, all of its employees, and its countless fans to putting the best product on the field and continuing the work to set the gold standard for workplaces in the NFL.
Wait, that's in the team statement?
You heard me. I did not stutter.
Daniel, sir. You can't make this up, Mo.
Attorneys Lisa Banks and Deborah Katz, who represent more than 40 former employees, accusing Snyder of workplace improprieties, in a statement called "The Possible Sale," a good development for the team, its former and current employees, and its many fans. We will have to see how this we will have to see how this unfolds, but this could obviously be a big step toward healing and closure for the many brave women and men who came forward. So
there are so many things you could have said. That's not one of them.
That's not one of them. I don't know why you would.
Why would you even bring that into the conversation knowing what's out there?
Well, and knowing what the reaction to it is going to be. Just kind of whistle past the graveyard on that one, and hopefully nobody else brings it up. But since you brought it up first, you've opened that box.
They finna drag you. I mean, that's exactly what's fixing that.
And I don't think they're going to wait, you know.
My gosh.
Yeah.
You cannot make this.
It's like when you put something like that in that release, it's like you're saying, "Drag me, please."
That's exactly what it is. He's begging you because
and there will be no shortage of people willing to say, "Okay, bet." As you like to say,
at least 40.
Yeah.
Or countless.
Countless, like the fans.
Yeah, you have countless fans. Well, we have countless folks just waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter is a cesspool, Daniel. Do you not know what is out there?
Goodness gracious. Yeah. So
we're crazy people.
We'll see how that goes.
That is insane. Well, hopefully, yeah, it would be interesting. I don't know.
I have to interrupt the story of the day because I'm reading a tweet here, scrolling through Twitter as we are wont to do. I guess there was UT Access today, and somebody asked Cedric Tillman how he was injury-wise. He said he's good. They said, put it on a scale of 1 to 100. He said, feels like 98.
It's a great tweet. That is a great quote, by the way. Cedric Tillman for the win. I would just like to point that out.
Yeah.
You got that from @Zayduck?
Yeah.
Yeah. It just happened to be on top of my Twitter as well right now. But yeah, that is a Cedric Tillman. Kudos, my friend.
Well played, sir. Well played. Yeah.
Oh, man. Hey, Taylor Lewan is trending. He's twinding.
Twinding?
Taylor Lewan is twinding right now. I don't know why I can't talk, but sure. I have no idea why he's trending, but other than apparently he had an interesting costume. On yeah, tons of other folks.
I wonder if at all.
Justin. Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint treats your orthopedic injuries and existing conditions. Our trained physicians will get you back in the game faster. Contact us at 931-381-2663 or www.mtbj.net. Hey folks, while we take a quick break from the show, I want to tell you about our friends over at Custom Stone Handlers in downtown Columbia. Ed Rich and his team at Custom Stone Handlers believe in leadership. And outside of the military, our greatest leader building platform is sports. Custom Stone Handlers proudly encourages young people to get in the game. You can contact them today at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, a look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
Are you an enthusiastic sports fan? Want to have fun and get in on the action?
Heck, yes, that'd be awesome.
Have great attention to detail? Want to stay active?
Definitely.
Want to give back to the student athletes in your community?
Obviously, yes.
Then you'd make an excellent high school sports official. We need more officials in Tennessee. Because with no high school officials, there are no high school sports. Sign up today at highschoolofficials.com.
Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Maury County schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic injuries, and our Ortho Quick walk-in service lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net. As soon as we went to break, of course. It's like every time I start talking, the internet must not want to hear what I've got to say. And I have no idea if you can hear us or not, folks. But if you can, we'd like to welcome in Heather Williams of WCYB-TV to talk a little NASCAR. Heather, how are you?
I'm good.
Oh,
We're a
look
little
at
something to counteract Mo there. This is
Good Lord. Look at this. Look at you. I mean, I'm not shocked, but the audacity. The audacity is a little we're gonna indulge you though. because we like you. We
How
like
long
you.
have known me? You knew this week this was gonna happen.
I guess in retrospect, you're right. I should have known. This is my fault. Yeah, this is my fault entirely.
You wore the two-tone blue.
And I did not intentionally wear the two-tone blue. It just worked out that way. No, this was not intentional. That
the sign behind you also not intentional.
No, that's totally intentional.
Okay.
Yeah, because the only way to cover up that wall.
Yeah. Oh, goodness gracious.
Look, as a long-suffering Chiefs fan who suffered through Tyler Palco and all of the amazing other no-name quarterbacks that have come through.
That was an Alabama.
Brody Croyle.
Yeah, there
Brody
we go.
Croyle. Brody Croyle, by the way, owns the distinction of being the man with the most NFL starts to not get a win.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we suffered through that. So I am very much enjoying the last 4 or 5 years.
As well, you should. I mean, I've in a baseball sense, I've kind of been in a similar situation. So, I mean, I get it. I don't have a problem with it. But you can certainly understand UT fans of late as well.
Oh, for sure.
Didn't Tyler Bray play for the Chiefs, though?
Tyler Bray did play.
Yeah.
Well, he was on the team. I'm not sure how much
he played. He was
I'm not sure how much playing he did.
If you want to talk about good balls that played there, let's go Dustin Colquitt or maybe
Eric Berry
or Smith, the offensive lineman that's here
yeah.
now.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, Tyler would not. Tyler would not be in that conversation.
No, he would not.
Yeah, I don't know that he ever got off the practice squad.
Oh, so it's a big week for you with that Sunday night football game. I don't know that we're worthy of the spirit that you have for that game right now. We'll see how
Well,
it
I will
goes.
say this. The Titans, for whatever reason, have been an absolute thorn in the Chiefs' side. And on years where the Chiefs were absolutely the favorites in the game, it has not worked out that way. So I'm not overly confident about this game. Excited, yes, but man, the Titans, like the Colts, who got us earlier this year, those are one of those teams that just always seem to, no matter what, be a problem for the Chiefs.
I think the Titans have an innate way, and I think it starts with Mike Vrabel, of just uglying up a game enough that they can keep themselves in it. I think that's kind of been the key for them. Clearly, we don't want to get too far off in the woods with Titans Chiefs, but we can talk that. But, Chris.
Andy Reid is like 1-8 or 1-9
Against
the Titans.
Yeah, it's
All
something
time.
ridiculous.
It's bad.
It's something ridiculously bad. So, like I
Wow.
said, I don't want to get excited. There are you have a number of people that can come on this show, by the way, and speak far more intelligently about the Titans and Chiefs than
But
me.
not about the Chiefs. You at least
Not
watch
about
them.
the yeah.
That's probably fair. But
Yeah.
I mean, that's not why you have me. I just wanted to. I had to
Love it.
rib mow a little bit. I had to.
Me. Heather, Chris showed us the clip from this past weekend, and I had not seen it. And have you ever seen anything like that?
No, it doesn't look real. It looks like a scene out of Cars. People are tweeting that meme of Lightning McQueen going up on the wall to make the pass in the movie Cars, because so I was at the race. I did not see it live because I was following the winner, Christopher Bell, going across the start-finish line with my camera and getting that celebration. Then I hear the crowd like erupt. And I'm like, what's going on? Who's fighting? What's happening? I mean, because that's where your mind goes in Martinsville. And then I heard what happened, and we did all the interviews. I sat on my computer and I looked at the video, and I honestly thought it was like sped up. Like, it doesn't look real. The fact that he's able to go that much faster, he was moving at a pace that was almost a second and a half faster than the qualifying speed from the day before for the top qualifier. I mean, it was just insane. And no, long story short, no, I've never seen anything like that. It's one of those things like the Pass in the Grass and One Hot Night and Have You Ever? No, I've Never with Kurt Busch and Ricky Craven, that's going to be talked about forever in NASCAR.
But in retrospect, though, Heather, and again, clearly I'm not the NASCAR guy that either you or Chris is, but in retrospect, are you surprised that no one has done it sooner?
No. I mean, when I talked to the drivers, most of the drivers said, well, we knew this would probably work, but nobody ever had the guts to do it. I mean, his car, it's kind of a combination of guts, of opportunity, of circumstance. I mean, his car
of desperation.
Yeah. I mean, his car's destroyed, right? So you have to be this part in a situation, especially when cars are at a premium, that you know you're not going to need that car the rest of the year, right? You also have to be you have to do something, right? If he didn't do this, he was not going on to the championship for. So he was completely desperate. So it was just, a little bit of like guts and opportunity meeting each other. And Ross is one of the few drivers that would actually do that just because of his personality. Not a lot of guys, even some of the guys that you think are the craziest guys in the garage area, they would still never do that. And they would admit to you, if you ask them today, that they would probably not try that. Because, I mean, there is a little bit of danger that went with what he did. But, Ross doesn't care. I mean, he just does it. And so it made for a very memorable moment.
Well, and I know that I'm no physicist, you're no physicist, but how does that work? I mean, is it just when you're up against the wall and going that fast? I mean, how does
it kind of takes a steering element out of it because
right,
the wall is going to take you wherever you're going.
He's riding the wall and he's in fifth gear. I
let her
heard a
rip.
segment with Daniel
Yep.
Suarez that said that they were in third and fourth gear of everybody else. So he's literally going faster than everyone else. He's not worrying about the steering because he's up against the wall.
He's not going to go anywhere. I mean,
Right.
I get that. Yeah.
Just keep it
Just stay on the wall.
keep it on the wall.
Yeah.
That is it's interesting to me how
I
that
mean, if you really want to know, like, understand the real physics of it, there's a great segment on the Sirius XM radio broadcast. I'm sure it's on the podcast Speedway with Dave Moody. NBC Sports has a scientist that breaks down the science of NASCAR. And she was on the show yesterday, I believe, breaking down exactly scientifically how that worked. And to be honest with you, she would probably do a way better job of explaining it than me. And it was really interesting just to hear her talk about the intricacies of why that would work and why it may not work all the time or at other places too. So they put their podcast online. You can check that out. And it's really fascinating.
So did he have to beat Hamlin to the line, or did he just have to get 2 spots from where he was?
No, he didn't have to beat Hamlin to the line, but he ended up beating him.
He did it.
Yeah. He only needed to pick up 2 spots.
Okay.
And I think he ended up passing something like 12 cars in 5 spots in the last 2 turns. I mean, it's incredible when I walked out, and I took a picture, but it does not do it justice. When you walked out of Martinsville, there was a black stripe that started in turn 3 and went all the way around the track into turn 1, where his car just rode up against the wall. I mean, it was incredible.
It's phenomenal. I, again, never seen anything like it. It was, and like you said, memorable moment. That moment will be talked about in NASCAR for a long, long time, no matter what happens on Sunday in Phoenix. But Ross Chastain putting himself into the championship.
Where were you when Ross Chastain rode the wall at Martinsville, right? I mean,
as you know, when you watched it as it was happening, and or even moments after it happened, like you said, it was quite literally unbelievable. And those moments are few and far between in all sports. It's like Doug Flutie Hail Mary.
It's kind of the equivalent of a Hail Mary or a last second shot at the March Madness. I mean, it's that kind of implications and that kind of, oh my gosh, what just happened?
And it is exactly that, because it put him into the championship race. I mean, and that I think is, and the disappointment in Denny Hamlin's voice when he just said, "I guess we lost on that." I mean, it was just unfortunate to hear.
You know, I have to say though, I was pretty impressed with the way that Denny handled the whole thing. Everything that's gone on with Denny and with Ross all year long, it would have been very easy for him to have taken the road that a lot of the other drivers did, to talk about calling the move embarrassment, or we can't have this anymore, or that's not the way you win a championship. And Denny just decided not to do that. He's like, you know, I'm assuming what you're referring to is a TV interview. I talked to him maybe 15 minutes after that, when they let the local media and some of the national.
This was on his radio.
His crew.
Okay.
In-car radio.
Well, when we were talking to him afterwards, I mean, he was like, he was basically like, you know, he tried it. It worked. Hats off to him. You know, he did what he had to do to advance. I mean, he didn't talk about, well, he shouldn't be here, or he still got one coming to him, or any of that kind of stuff. He was just like, well, you know, he found a way to get it done. And so I was pretty impressed with that. I think that maybe some of the things that happened with his driver a couple of weeks ago caused Denny to also have some introspection and to look at how he behaves in the heat of the moment. And I think that has made him mature as well. Not just Bubba, but Denny as well.
We'll take that. Because like you said, he certainly had his moments as well.
Well, Ross, to be fair, Ross played into that.
Oh, no.
And Ross doesn't look like he's changed at all.
Listen, Ross Chastain has zero regard.
Yeah.
He is his own
Honey
man.
badger.
He's gonna do his thing. And, you know, results and whatever happens, and I'm just here for a good time kind of thing. And
if you ain't rubbing, you ain't racing, right?
Well, I mean, you know, but from Ross' perspective, how else can you be? He was
No.
the guy that ran as a back marker for years,
Sure.
starting parks and running around 20 laps down and all that kind of stuff. And now he is running for a championship. That kid is going to enjoy every single second of this.
As he should.
Yeah. And then who can blame him? I mean,
Right.
I've known Ross for a long time, and it's an incredible story.
If he wins this thing on Sunday and we don't get invited to the Trackhouse Racing party, we're going to have problems.
We
because
When you guys get invited to the Trackhouse Racing party during Champions Week, I'm going to expect you to hook the girl up.
no, absolutely.
No question.
Because
In fact, it might be the other. It might have to be the other way around. You probably got a little more street cred in NASCAR than we do.
Well,
Yeah,
so
we should have more
No.
Trackhouse cred.
you have the Trackhouse cred. I don't really know anyone other than Ross and Trackhouse. And as I've known Ross for a long time, but I would not say that Ross and I are like tight or anything. I don't have his phone number. So
We got Ty Norris's phone number.
Maybe we need
Exactly.
to go ahead and put that call into Ty now.
Ty, listen, don't
Just-
forget us when this thing goes
There we go.
north. Because listen, does Ross Chastain have a chance to win at Phoenix?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This thing is as wide open as it has ever been. Now, if you were, I made our picks in my TV show, which actually had to be delayed until tomorrow because of the rain out in baseball, but screwed up our newscast for the whole week. But if you ask me to handicap it and pick a winner, I'm picking Christopher Bell purely on momentum. He has 2 walk-off wins in each of the rounds, and despite some bad luck, has run the most consistently in the playoffs. But this is 2022. Are you kidding me? I mean, so many crazy things have happened. Precedent, consistency, none of that matters. And all 4 of these drivers are the kind of guys that are desperate enough that they would do something. I talked about there's very few guys in the garage area that would do something like Ross. All 4 of these guys, Chase Elliott being the least of which, would definitely do this. But Joey, Christopher, and Ross, they'd wreck their mama to win. I mean, they're that crazy. So I think it's going to be a great weekend of racing. Actually, between all 3 of the series, I think it's as wide open as you've ever seen. I think Phoenix is going to be phenomenal.
That being said, Phoenix is a unique place for a championship, to say the least. But I think this is one of those races where, sometimes you want to go with the person who can deal with the pressure. And to me, that screams like it fits the 22 and the 9 more than anybody.
You say that, but what Christopher Bell twice under pressure won
That's true.
in this postseason. So, and Ross under pressure, did that crazy thing. So yes, there's experience in the 22 and the 9 for sure. They've been there, done that. They both have championships. But the 2 young guys, I mean, Christopher Bell's crew chief is a 2-time champion crew chief with Kyle Busch. So he's been there, done that as well. That's why I'd say it's so wide open. You look at what's on paper and you say, oh, well, this is easy. I'm going with the 22. And then you look and go, but, and then all of a sudden you've talked yourself into all 4 guys.
That's
Because a case can be made for each of them.
For sure. And this year's been so crazy, and the cars are so much more even than they've ever been. And all 4 of these guys are very hungry for different reasons.
what makes Phoenix a good place for a championship.
Well, it's a short track. It's a mile track. It's kind of a combination between a short track and an intermediate track, but it races probably a little bit more like a short track, and the drivers love it. It's very challenging. All the corners are a little bit different. The straightaways are different because you've got a traditional straightaway on the back stretch, and then you've got a tri-oval on the front stretch, which is kind of unusual for a short track as well. And of course, I mean, the best reason, the weather. I mean, it's one of those places where you don't have to worry about, weather. It was kind of gross. It would never rain or anything, but it was overcast and kind of cool in Martinsville this last weekend. It snowed when we were there in the spring. And those are the kinds of things you don't really have to worry about in Phoenix. So I think the combination of all of those things makes Phoenix a really good place to end the season.
Well, you've already given us your pick of Christopher Bell, but how confident are you?
Not very, not very at all. I mean, the reason that I say Christopher is I think he's been the most consistent of the drivers all year. But I mean, like I said, I could talk myself into all four drivers. I honestly would probably pick Ross second, and then Joey, and then Chase. I think Chase has just not been very consistent. Like, he's just kind of skated through the whole playoffs on his regular season championship and using those points. And I just don't feel like that team has the momentum right now. The other three teams are very close, very, very close. But I just have a feeling about C-Bell. Like, I've been wrong all year, so I wouldn't go to Vegas or anything about it. But I just like the way that team's running, and the fact that they have a two-time champion crew chief leading the way.
There you go. Looking forward to it. So explain for those who maybe aren't used to NASCAR and don't understand.
Explain for me.
Explain how you win the championship. It's very simple, but
finish the highest of the four guys that are in it.
You don't have to win it.
You don't have to win. You just have to be the highest. Now, during the playoff era, the champion has won every race, which is incredible to think about when there are 36 guys in a race. But you don't have to win the championship. You just have to be the highest finisher of the four that are in the championship.
I ain't got to outrun everybody. I just got to outrun you.
That's it.
It's as if a bear is chasing us. That's all I'm saying.
And I'll be honest with you, this is probably the year where the champion doesn't win the race. Because it's
probably going to be one of those. Yep, it's just been one of those kind of years. So there you go. Heather Williams, WCYB-TV. And Heather, tell folks, how they can listen to your podcast. I know you guys probably don't do a whole lot out of season.
No, not a ton. I'll do a podcast this week, and then I will probably get the champion at some point. So I'll probably have a podcast the next week. And then I'll take probably a couple months off with the podcast, starting it back up in early January is when we started this year. All of the episodes are still online, so you can listen to them either at our website, or if you have Apple Podcasts, you can listen to them on there, or Podbean. I mean, we've had each of the championship four drivers on the podcast within the last 6 weeks. And my guest this Friday is Christopher Bell. Last week it was Ross Chastain. So all you have to do is go to WCYB.com or to Apple Podcasts, and you can listen to all the previous episodes.
That's the backstretch.
Yes, it's called the backstretch.
Mm-hmm. Backstretch is one word for.
Yes.
In case you weren't aware. The backstretch
for the uninitiated, right?
For those who may not be aware, it's called the backstretch, and you can go listen to all of those podcasts. But Heather, we will talk to you next week and continue talking to you as much as you want to, because again, there's plenty of things we can talk about, like the Chiefs.
And we enjoy talking to her.
Absolutely.
We may want to talk to her as the state playoffs progress as well, because she's got some folks up there that are going to bear.
Yeah, we got a couple of teams for sure. I would say probably 3 teams that have a really good chance of deep playoff runs. Mostly smaller schools, obviously Greenville. Daniel Boone is undefeated in Class 5A, and then Hampton is the number 1 team, or at some part of the season. I think they've dropped because they've got a couple of losses now, but definitely ranked up there in Class 2A. Mm-hmm. Yeah, their 2 losses are to 5A Daniel Boone and then a 4A school. So nobody in their classifications even come close to them.
That's good to know.
That is.
Considering that
perhaps we'll see you in Chattanooga.
Perhaps
we had 2 teams playing last year. The representative from Class 4A has been either Greenville or Elizabethton for the past 5 years.
Right.
With 4 wins, and then Elizabethton finally had that streak ended last year when they lost in the championship. But
to Tullahoma,
yes. A really good football team, by the way.
I was in the Sports Center video that was shown, because me and Justin Lamb were on the sideline watching
Chris Osselton's
interception. So yeah, that's my claim to fame at this point. I've been on ESPN on Sports Center once, but
there you go.
Heather, we appreciate it as always.
Yeah, if you want to see me on TV, I make a cameo in one of the appearances of Race for a Championship on USA Network.
Yes. Awesome.
So
We'll
I've been
look it
watching
up.
the whole series, just seeing if I'll pop up in it at any point. And I finally in the episode when Kyle Busch signed with RCR.
There
That's
you go.
awesome.
That's what we like to see.
There you go.
She's as famous as anyone in this room.
There we go.
No
Oh,
way.
yeah.
Mo's way more famous than me.
No.
We appreciate
No.
you, Heather, as always. We can't wait to talk to you next week.
Yep, we'll talk to you guys then.
All right. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk college football playoff ranking reactions right after this on Main Street Sports Today. This is Chris Yao with Main Street Sports Today. Every show, Mo Patton and I welcome friends from all across the sports landscape, from high school coaches and reporters to national, college, and pro sports personalities. You never know who might stop by for a chat. AP Tennessee sports editor, three-time Tennessee Sports Writer of the Year 2020 TSWA Hall of Famer. She covers the Titans, the Predators, the Grizzlies, college football, and hoops. Please make welcome Teresa Walker.
Former University of Tennessee, former Team USA Olympian, ex-Cy Young Award winner, R.A. Dickey. R.A., did I miss anything?
Man, that was sweet. Yeah, I need to listen to that before I go to bed every night. That was nice.
Has 5 sports Emmys. That's not bad for the other guy in Wham, Ryan McGee.
Other guy in Wham married the best looking girl, Bananarama. So other guy in Wham had a pretty good life.
From preps to pros, we're taking on the sports topics you care about. Tune in across Main Street Media social platforms at 2 p.m. or on demand on your podcast distribution platform of choice. Welcome back in Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. Chris Yao and Mo Patton coming to you live from Southern Middle Tennessee here in Columbia. Glad to have you with us as we are talking a little bit of college football. Last night, the playoff rankings were released, the first of the year, and we've already said it. Tennessee atop the rankings. Rocky tops the rankings. As you can see there, the top 25, Tennessee number 1, Ohio State number 2, Georgia number 3, and Clemson a surprising 4. Have you got yesterday's rankings in front of you?
Yeah.
How close did we get?
Let's see. We both had Georgia. We both had UT 1.
Right.
We both had Georgia 2. I had Ohio State 3, Michigan 4, Alabama 5. You had Michigan 3, Ohio State 4, Alabama 5. You had Clemson 6, Oregon 7. I had TCU 6, Clemson 7. You had TCU 8. I had Oregon 8.
And neither of us came close to LSU at 10.
Oh no. I didn't finish up, but you had UCLA 9 and USC 10.
I think USC's loss is probably I don't know how you can have Oregon at 8 and Utah at 14 and have USC at 9 and UCLA at 12. If I lost to the number 8 team and they lost to the number 14 team, how are they ranked 3 spots ahead of me?
It's the Pac-12 and they don't count.
I mean, essentially.
We're just getting them in there to get them in there. They're not going to be a factor in the playoff.
The fact that they have 3 teams in the top 12, though, is a little crazy.
But really, seriously, I mean.
And the SEC has 5 of 11. 5.
How many of these spots are going to matter between now and the end of the regular season?
Here's the thing. The only team outside the top 7 that has a chance to be in the top 4
is LSU.
Is LSU. That's it.
Because LSU still has to play Alabama.
And if they win the SEC championship, they're in. 2 losses or not.
Yeah.
Period.
But they can really upset the apple cart for a lot of other folks because, I mean, if LSU is your SEC champion, say Georgia beats Tennessee Saturday. Say it's LSU, Georgia in the SEC championship game. LSU beats Georgia. Tennessee's still sitting there with 1 loss.
Let me ask you this. If LSU was to win the SEC championship game,
By beating Georgia, which beat Tennessee, which beat LSU.
like
In
drum,
Baton Rouge.
like a drum.
That's one of a number of scenarios that the committee doesn't want to see. I think another one is Georgia beating Tennessee, Alabama beating Georgia.
That'd be brutal. They would be in trouble. But that's the only scenario I see that Tennessee doesn't get in. If they've all three got one loss and Alabama's the SEC champion, you can't keep them out. And I don't
You can't keep who out?
You can't keep Alabama out.
No, you
obviously.
can't keep Alabama out if Alabama wins the SEC championship.
And then it's kind of like TSSAA tiebreakers. Once I get the other one, you go back to head
to head. So Tennessee, just to be safe, kind of needs LSU to beat Alabama.
It would certainly completely change the dynamic. You would then feel like Tennessee was almost a lock at that point,
regardless of what happened Saturday.
To answer your question from earlier, what has to happen for Tennessee to not get in? I think obviously slip up and lose twice. I don't think that's going to happen. That's the obvious off the top.
Lose to Georgia, and then
outside of that, the only way is Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC championship. Period. Those are the only two ways.
So if Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship, then again, you're sitting there with 3 one-loss SEC teams, and they've all beaten each other.
Right.
And Tennessee, you feel like would be the odd team out
because of
when they
the head-to-head to Georgia.
Because Alabama's going.
Yeah, you can't keep a one-loss SEC champion out. You just can't do it, especially when it's named Alabama.
Yeah.
So that's it. That's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
the fact that you've got 4 SEC teams in the top 10, 5 in the top 11.
That's why I think that there's 2 SEC teams in the end going to be in the top 4. Here's the thing.
I don't think there's any way that there can't be 2 SEC teams in the top 4 at the end.
There can be. There's a way.
How?
Because if TCU's undefeated, Clemson's undefeated, at least either Ohio State or Michigan is going to be undefeated, and then you've got the SEC champion. And it would be the worst possible thing to ever happen in the playoff era if you left a Power 5 undefeated champion out. You can't do it. But this season is absolutely the best possible season to advocate for a 12-team playoff, especially if that happens.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you're going to be talking about 3 one-loss teams out of the SEC if it goes that way. And an undefeated TCU, is an undefeated TCU really better than a one-loss Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama?
Better? No. But can you leave out an undefeated Power 5 conference team?
It depends on what your objective is.
I understand that that's an argument.
If your objective is to get the 4 best teams, then yes, you can.
I don't.
Now, if it's not, then tell me that.
I think there's more than one objective.
I think you're right.
And that's, and I agree with you that Tennessee and Georgia with one loss would most certainly be more deserving of a playoff than either
particularly
Clemson or TCU.
Particularly, again, a Tennessee that has beaten 5 top 25 teams.
Right. And so I think that's where you got to you've got to make that call. You've got to say, well, what are we most worried about?
Mm-hmm.
And how much backlash are we willing to take from media and fans, etc.? Look, if you've got 3 undefeated Power 5 teams, and then
you've got
potentially 4 one-loss teams out there. Now, Oregon would be out, obviously, because of their loss to Georgia. But you would have 3 additional one-loss teams out there just saying, we're good enough to be in.
Well, here's the thing. Either LSU or Alabama is going to have 2 losses.
LSU's already got 2 losses.
Who else did they lose to?
Florida State in the season opener.
That's right.
Which is the real kicker here. Because if they were to win the SEC championship with 2 losses and one of those to Florida State, you can't keep Clemson out if they beat Florida State and win the ACC. So
the committee,
killer.
The committee really needs Alabama to beat LSU,
and Tennessee really needs LSU to beat Alabama, or Ole Miss to beat Alabama. That could happen too, and that'd be great. Either of those 2 things.
But an LSU SEC champ, who does that help more, Tennessee or Clemson?
Both. I don't know who helps more. Depending, I mean, if they were to beat Tennessee in the SEC championship game, it's a problem. But if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, I think it probably helps Tennessee and Clemson equally. Because again, Clemson would then be a lock. LSU, Tennessee's win over LSU, the way that they won it, would almost virtually be a lock. But you can't lose. You got to lose by 6 points or less to Georgia to still be in the conversation. If you lose. If you lose to Georgia, Tennessee's got to lose by more than a touchdown. Now, if they do lose by more than a touchdown, I think that the odds of them getting in drop significantly. You're needing everybody else to lose a game, including either Ohio State or Michigan, to somebody outside of Ohio State
and Michigan. Okay, so here's the next question. As we sit here on November 2nd, and Tennessee is number 1 in the CFP rankings, how disappointing is it if they don't make the playoffs?
As a Tennessee fan, am I disappointed? Yes. If we end up 11-1 with a New Year's Six bowl, I don't care. I didn't expect to be here at any point during this season. I mean,
you didn't expect to be here. You didn't expect to be in a New Year's Six bowl.
So if
you get a New Year's Six bowl, but you're not in the playoff,
I'm fine with that. I'll take that all day long.
In year 2,
I had Tennessee at 9-3. I had Tennessee losing to Alabama, Georgia, and either LSU or Florida to start the season. That's where I had Tennessee. They're 1 game away from that. Now, the only way that I'm disappointed is if, at this point, if they don't finish 11-1.
Right.
Because there's no
if they lose to South Carolina, Vanderbilt, or Missouri.
Yeah, you can't lose to any of those 3. Otherwise, it's a disappointing end of the year. I mean, sans Hendon Hooker and Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman all going out, or Brian Young or any of those guys.
Yeah.
Now, so there's that. But anybody else that surprises you in here? I mean, is there any ranking?
You mean other than LSU?
Other than LSU that you just go, okay, well that's interesting. Illinois, a 7-1 Illinois. Who saw that coming, Brett Bielema?
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the fly in the ointment as you look at it. I mean, you didn't see that coming.
Mac Brown's North
hats
Carolina.
off to Tulane.
Tulane, man. Heck yeah. They're only lost to Ole Miss right now.
That's
And it was close.
Mhm.
They almost beat them. Had they beaten them, we might be talking about Tulane in the top 10 right now.
right. UCF getting ready to claim another national championship, I guess, at number 25.
Gus Malzahn, baby.
But yeah, I think Illinois, I don't think anybody could have expected that.
Nope. Nope.
They are the, what, fourth team out of the Big Ten?
Yeah. So
it's pretty solid.
it is. It is, in fact. Speaking of Tennessee and Georgia, I asked this question: Where does this game rank among 1-2 matchups in at least since 1966 regular season only? I kept out the BCS national any bowl game that just doesn't make sense. But for a regular season, and there have only been 4 since 2000. Texas, Ohio State in 06. Ohio State, Michigan also in 06, and then LSU, Bama in 11 and 19.
I tell you what, that LSU Alabama game in 11 was as good a regular season game as you will ever see. And if Tennessee, Georgia can come close to that, then it'll be a heck of a ball game. It should be a great ball game. But that was just edge of your seat or standing up for 60 minutes, no matter where you were. I mean, I was at some friend's house watching, and I think most of us stood up the whole time. It was just incredible. So
It was great to watch.
yeah.
Couple others I have highlighted here. 93, Sean Wooden batting down Charlie Ward's pass as Notre Dame beat Florida State in South Bend. That was as far as iconic games go, that was one of them.
That 91 wide right
one, of course. Yeah, absolutely. And then 71, I mean, I don't know much about it, but apparently considered one of the greatest games in college football history. Nebraska beating Oklahoma 35-31 down in Norman.
Yeah, I think that was Johnny Rogers, I think, was a running back for Nebraska, and I think Joe Washington was the big Oklahoma running back, and I think they just kind of went back and forth all game in that one.
But as far as, hype goes, I think the college football playoff ranking is diminishing it a little bit. This does not have the same feel as 11 had with Alabama LSU.
You don't think?
Well, reason being is because everybody kind of expected that all year long. Everybody expected Alabama LSU to meet November 5th and it just be a dogfight. Everybody knew that it was going to be, game of the century. It had been that way for 3 or 4 weeks leading up to it. And I think Tennessee kind of coming out of nowhere, it doesn't have that. We didn't have the off-season build up to this game. We didn't have the in-season build up to this game. You've just got so many things that didn't quite build up.
Right.
I mean, obviously, a lot of folks are talking about it because it has major implications. But here's the thing. Georgia has to win this game or they're done. Their season's over. If Georgia loses this game, they cannot win the college football playoff, period. They will have a grand total of one
top 25
win. Now, they'll go New Year's 6, maybe.
Yeah, because, I mean, if Tennessee beats Georgia, then Tennessee is going to win the SEC East. Even if Tennessee loses in the SEC championship game, that's going to be their first loss. And they will still have beaten Georgia. So yeah, there's no road really.
Georgia cannot play its way back in.
Oh, now, what if Tennessee beats Alabama in the SEC championship game? Then Alabama's got two
I
losses.
still don't think Georgia has a resume outside of
A one-loss Georgia that did not play in its conference championship game.
their resume just doesn't hold up.
Yeah. And I can see that.
It just the only way would be if Oregon was the number 5 team, and that's the team that they were fighting to get in that last spot for. They'd have to have a lot of things happen. They'd have to have Clemson lose and have TCU lose. You'd have to have a lot of things happen in order for them to get back in. Yeah. But it would be they could not play themselves back in, is my point.
Right.
They'd have somebody else have to play their way out. So
that makes sense.
Anyway.
Oh, by the way, that was Greg Pruitt, not Joe Washington, for Oklahoma in that ball game. But yeah.
Well, we're going to take a quick break. We'll continue talking college football on the other side of it with the Athletics senior writer, David Ubben. He'll join us. Stick around. We'll be right back after this.
This holiday season, the largest lantern event in the country returns to Nashville Zoo. After sunset, come see more than 1,000 Chinese lanterns. All new designs including mythical beasts, a fantastical North Pole village, even a dragon soaring over your head. Welcome back to Zoo Illumination at Nashville Zoo. Bigger, brighter, and better than ever.
Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Maury County Schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic injuries, and our Ortho Quick walk-in service lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net. Welcome back in Main Street Sports today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint. Chris Yow and Mo Patton here on this Wednesday edition. It's a wild and wacky Wednesday, the weirdest and wildest news from across the world and Florida coming your way right after this next segment. But right now, we dive into some more college football as we are joined by senior writer for The Athletic, David Ubben. David, what's going on, buddy?
Not much, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you for joining us, David. Did not know how the first college football playoff rankings were going to go when we reached out to you, but did feel like Tennessee was going to be in the top 4, not necessarily number 1. But I mean, as you took in more information and started to look at the situation with more clear eyes, there really was no other number 1 right out of the box, was there?
No, I mean, I thought it was pretty clear that their resume has been the best. I think, the human polls are always interesting because unlike the committee, the human polls, everybody kind of does it differently. So I think most people probably wouldn't disagree that Tennessee has the best resume, but that's not how all the voters vote. And they sort of have their own, sort of philosophies. But I do know, we've had 7 seasons of data for how the committee handles it. So I thought it was pretty clear Tennessee was going to be number 1. I was actually surprised that it seemed to be closer. I was on the call last night and asked Boo Corrigan about how far the gap is between 1, 2, and 3. And they said they had some pretty lively discussion between Tennessee, Ohio State, and Georgia. That actually surprised me. But they use a lot of advanced numbers. They use a ton of metrics. The process is convoluted and more complicated than it probably needs to be. Just in general to get a top 20. But I think, I hope some more educated fans understand that it's not 13 people that are submitting a top 25 poll and it's a slim down poll. There's teams and pools, and then they rank teams against each other. It's very complicated. I wrote about it if you want to seek it out, but it's a complicated process. But either way, ultimately, I thought it was pretty clear Tennessee was going to be number 1. I was surprised that it didn't seem like probably everybody in the room agreed from what it sounds like.
I think, and I mentioned this when Chris and I were talking earlier this week, I think a lot of Tennessee fans probably felt like they should be number 1, but also having gone through battered ball syndrome for as long as they have, they probably weren't really ready to believe it until they actually saw it last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the question is, who's the best team in the country, right? I think there's a lot of fair debate about that. I think you could talk me into a handful of teams. But at some point, and this is where I think the committee does a lot of good things, is that, some people necessarily don't believe it, and the eye test does factor in some. And I think that the committee, which I actually think is kind of weird, that they prefer more balanced teams. So if you have a team where their metrics are kind of out of whack, like Tennessee's are a little bit, where their offensive numbers kind of outpace their defensive numbers. Oklahoma's been dinged for that in the past. TCU was dinged for that in 2014, going back there. If you're not balanced, they kind of are kind of weird about it. But ultimately, it can't just be about, well, who's the team that I think is the best. At the end of the day, you have to go by what they actually did, and what Tennessee has done over the first 2 months of the season is have the best set of wins of anybody. You look at Florida, LSU, Pitt, Alabama, of course, and Kentucky last week. It's pretty impressive, and it'll be interesting to see, because this is important for Tennessee, especially if they lose this weekend. It'll be interesting to see if Florida and Kentucky can win some games late. Maybe Pitt win some games late. Maybe a couple of those teams sneak into the top 25 to bolster your resume, because the committee does look at top 25 wins, top 40 wins a little bit as well, but top 25 wins do mean a lot. And they don't care about anybody else's poll. They care about their poll. And that's what matters. And it matters at the moment in time, not when you beat them, unless, like if you beat, if Bryce Young, is out for the season tomorrow, they're not going to devalue Tennessee's win, on the back end of that. They make some differentiation for injuries and some conditions and stuff. But if I'm a Tennessee fan, especially if I lose, if you win on Saturday, it's going to be hard for you not to make the playoff regardless of what happens. But if Tennessee loses on Saturday, it helped them a lot if Florida and Kentucky and Pitt would win some ball games down the stretch.
David Ubbins, senior writer for The Athletic, joining us here on Main Street Sports Today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint. David, before you ascended to your current position, you covered the University of Tennessee for The Athletic.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any thought that in year 2 of Josh Heupel, we'd be having this discussion?
No, because I'm a big believer in Bud Elliott's blue chip ratio, and it takes a long time to build a program. You can, peak and maybe get in the top 5 of the rankings or have a nice run and do all those things. But for Tennessee to do what they're doing this year, where they look like a real national championship contender, and I had a piece in The Athletic today talking to a bunch of coaches around the league and teams and guys that have played against Georgia and Tennessee. And nobody really was skeptical of Tennessee. For them to do that, their 24/7 Sports Talent composite rating is 19 right now. They are not included in the blue chip ratio. So for them to be in the playoff hunt, they are bucking a lot of trends. And I think you can point to the offensive system for one. You can point to Hendon Hooker ascending to be the kind of guy that he hadn't to this point in his career, before kind of last year, shown an ability to do or to be this guy, but he is. It's I don't think so, and I think it's just because the level of talent that they have, and I think their top 22 is pretty good. They don't have the depth that Alabama and Georgia and those teams have, but I would say I definitely am surprised because their level of talent. We have a good couple decades of data that Tennessee is bucking right now. Pretty hard line trends that Tennessee is bucking, and that is pretty amazing.
I think that's the thing that most Tennessee fans, most rational Tennessee fans, and there are some out there. They're few and far between, but there are some. But most rational Tennessee fans would tell you that they didn't expect this either, and it's because of those exact things. And look, we're kind of enjoying this ride right now. If you're a fan of Tennessee football, now outside of that, and we just kind of gone through the 25, top 25 ranking, but how important is the SEC championship game when you're talking about potentially undefeated TCU, undefeated Clemson, undefeated Ohio State or Michigan? If that happens, is the SEC champion the only SEC team that can get in?
Well, it depends on who wins that game, I think, ultimately. You look at how this is going to shake out. I mean, at the end of the day, you can't control what TCU does or if Clemson drops a game. They'll have to play probably North Carolina in the ACC championship. It looks pretty unlikely that they'll lose to anybody before then. TCU, I mean, their game control has been really bad this year. I think they'll be in some dogfights the last month of the season. They've got, Texas and Baylor. I think both of those might be on the road, if I recall. Those are going to be tough games for them. So they got to win those. They certainly can win those games, but they've been in so many tight games. We'll see. Ohio State, Michigan will sort itself out. Certainly, whoever loses that game will be sitting there with a pretty good case for inclusion as well. So it'll depend on how many undefeated you have standing there at the end. But ultimately, if Alabama wins the SEC championship after losing to Tennessee, but they go and obviously they'll have wins over LSU. In theory, that have wins over Ole Miss in theory, and then of course closing it with a win over Georgia or Tennessee. They're getting in. That's pretty obvious at this point. And so, but if you're sitting there and if you're Georgia, ultimately whoever wins this Tennessee Georgia game, I think can still, as long as they get there undefeated, they can lose the SEC championship and they'll still get in. But at the end of the day, the loser of Georgia, Tennessee, if Georgia loses on Saturday, it's going to be really, really hard for them to get in because they'll drop out and they don't have a game at the end of the last month of the season that can help you move up. You need a ton of help if you're Georgia. If you're Tennessee, obviously you're starting at number 1. You have better wins. You have some wins, like I mentioned before, Kentucky, Florida, LSU and Pitt that might get better as the season progresses, depending on how those teams perform. Georgia doesn't have quite the same resume, and Georgia, can fall a little further. So if Alabama wins, the SEC is going to get 2 teams in, period. But if Georgia wins the SEC championship over Alabama, and Tennessee's sitting there and they've lost on Saturday and they're sitting there at 11-1, they're going to have a really strong case, and it's going to be close. That's going to be a really nervous Sunday for Tennessee fans. And it'll depend on, again, what else, everything else that shakes out. Or do you have a one-loss Ohio State or a Michigan team sitting there, or TCU and Clemson still undefeated? What does that look like? So you can't really control all that, but ultimately I still think the SEC is in a pretty good position to get multiple teams in. You have 3 right now that have pretty strong position that they can kind of control it. And Alabama can beat, Tennessee and Georgia, certainly.
And of course, if you're in the SEC championship, you miss Tennessee, you're feeling pretty good no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. So I want to get off of this briefly. So tell me, Mo, if you want to continue on Tennessee, because we wanted to talk a little bit about the Auburn coaching situation, and we didn't get the chance to dive into it, but there have been some names that have been rumored. And I know, you're covering all of college football, and Auburn right now is a lot to deal with. So if you're keeping up with it, I know you're busy, but Matt Rule is a name that I'm hearing has mutual interest between he and the staff there at Auburn. You've got obviously Lane Kiffin, Hugh Freeze has been mentioned, several names out there, Deion Sanders. How big of a name does Auburn have to hire for this to work?
I'm going to cop out and say it doesn't matter because everybody hated Tennessee's hire. If you get the guy, I mean, you like people, the idea of the splash hire, how many more guys do we need to see? Tom Herman, Scott Frost, how many more guys we need to see that are splashy and they're the hottest new name and they don't work out? You need the right guy for the right situation. I am very skeptical that Matt Rule would seriously consider taking an SEC job. I know him a little bit, and I think he would have some interest in going back to Texas, but I think certainly, Big Ten country, something along those lines is a lot more, I think, what he would probably be looking for if he has his pick. Now we'll see.
Wisconsin/Nebraska.
Maybe, but I think if you're, if you're Wisconsin or Nebraska, I think you put the full court press on Lance Leipold. That's what I would do. I don't think you can do worse than that. For those two guys. If I'm Auburn, I'm putting the full court press on Lane Kiffin and seeing what happens. The Deion piece of it, man, the risk reward is really, really high. I think Deion is, at the end of the day, what he's done at Jackson State and his ability to bring talent there is unimpeachable. But I also lived in Dallas in the middle of the prime prep saga and saw how badly that went. And that was unbelievable. I mean, that was just pure scam. So he's a guy that is certainly, talk about splashy hires. I mean, I think your risk reward is pretty high, but it's a talent acquisition game. And if you're getting the number one player in the country to come play for you at Jackson State, I mean, that's wild. That is wild stuff. Now, can he do that somewhere else? And can he be as successful on the field when you compare what the talent that he has at Jackson State to the teams that they're playing and the other HBCUs? It's really not close. They have a lot more talent than anybody else. And so, if he goes to Auburn or anywhere else, Georgia Tech, whatever you want to point to, he's not going to have a huge talent gap. So can he make that up with coaching? I think we'll find out. There's certainly a lot of risk there. He's not a really experienced coach. Certainly he's a very experienced player, been around the block a few times. But this is going to be a really interesting coaching cycle. And I think too, last year, I think you learned that, nobody's out of reach. Nobody saw Brian Kelly and Lincoln Riley leaving jobs that nobody leaves. Nobody leaves Notre Dame. Nobody leaves Oklahoma until they do. And I also think the one thing that I would look out for as well is I'm not sure that coaches in the ACC, or I say coaches, I mean fans, in the ACC, in the Pac-12, and the Big 12 understand, you're still Power 5 in name right now, but everyone sees that this is going to be the Big 10 and the SEC's game. And if you're not in one of those two leagues, you're probably going to be dealing with having your coaches be poached, 4 teams in those leagues. And I think that might be, from my perspective, that might be the story of the coaching carousel this year, is seeing coaches that you wouldn't expect leave from programs that are, in those 3 leagues that in another era might look like a lateral move or a step down. But when the money gap is so wide, you're talking about $15-20 million a year in TV money, they might leave places that you wouldn't expect. So, there's all the same names bouncing around the coaching carousel, but I think you could have a pretty wild year from guys leaving jobs that you wouldn't expect.
David, make me understand why Lane Kiffin would leave a relatively serene existence at Ole Miss to jump into whatever there is at Auburn.
I wouldn't. I think, but you have to try and make him if you're Auburn. I think that's the deal. If I'm Lane Kiffin, I'm probably not wanting to get in the middle of that because I think, Auburn hasn't had a ton of turnover, but Gus Malzahn, I think he might be the only coach to be on the hot seat for 6 years after going to the national championship in I think that was year 1, wasn't it? If I recall.
It was.
And so, they might not have turnover, but it seems like the stress level and the just the experience and quality of life coaching at Auburn seems like not something that I would particularly want to do. Whereas Lane, obviously, with the last 2 seasons and what he's done, he's built up a tremendous amount of capital at Ole Miss. And I think that means something. So if I'm Lane, I'm sitting and waiting and seeing if there's a job that I really want. But if I'm Auburn, I'm putting the full court press on him and saying, we got to get this guy. That's who'd be number 1 on my list personally.
It's interesting.
It really is, and it's going to be interesting.
I think Lane Kiffin doesn't want to go too far from Oxford, maybe about an hour and a half southeast. And
well, then going to Auburn does not accomplish.
Does not help you.
That
does not help you in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
No, no.
If
that's what he wants,
if Tuscaloosa is your ultimate goal, you can't go to Auburn.
Then he's just got to cool out at Oxford for now.
Chill for a while.
Yeah, but my thing is, as you look at this Auburn situation, I'm afraid Auburn's going to swing and miss a few times,
like they did last time. That's how they
probably
Harsin, right?
Yeah, but I mean, everyone gets so caught up in well, what does this mean for us? What happens? Oh, it's embarrassing when we have to settle for our 4th or 5th pick. Dude, if your guy wins, no one cares about the carousel. Seriously, no one cares. You got to find – I think you have to have an AD, and this is the challenge ahead of John Cohen, which, I'd have to look up exactly what – I think he's an Alabama guy, and I have to look up exactly what his relationship was with Auburn. I think it's key for ADs to understand the strengths and weaknesses of your lot in life, whatever that looks like, how to emphasize those strengths and how to minimize those weaknesses, and find the coach that can do that for you and understand what that fit looks like. And, not just go get the splashiest hire. If you've got a 5-star linebacker that has played, a 3-4 his entire career, and you run a 4-3 and he says, I want to come to your school and go, be your next star linebacker, and he's got to come in there, and he might not be the best fit for you. Yeah, he's this 5-star talent. He's done all these things, but it might not work out. And I think, a lot of ADs, because they want to win that, win the press conference and win over the boosters. They want that splashy guy that gets them the headlines and the off-season profile, and that stuff is worthless if you're sitting there in year 3, sitting there at 6 and 4 again. Yeah, exactly. You're sitting there at 6 and 4 in year 2. That's that stuff just does not matter. You got to find your fit and you got to win, because again, I really think Tennessee's a good example. I mean, you couldn't find a more underwhelming hire, even for the fans that are like the most loyal Tennessee fans. And you're sitting here in year 2, number 1 in the country. At this point in my career, I have never had less confidence in assessing how hires are going to go anywhere, whether they're good or bad. And I just think you just don't really know, because it was not going particularly well for Josh Heupel at UCF. And now he's at Tennessee and he's tearing it up. And so, it's just, you never really know how a coach is going to fit into a program, but the AD has to, and that's what your job is.
Alan Green certainly did not fit at Auburn. He was not going to be controlled by that group of folks.
No.
He was not going to be controlled.
The thing is, the best coaches and the best ADs are really good at influencing people. And maybe it's your idea, and you backslap your way into them believing
it's theirs.
That's their idea. I think, you didn't hear a lot about this when, you didn't hear a lot about the uproar at Texas when Mac Brown was around, because Mac Brown was legendary at this. He was so good at massaging egos, keeping everybody happy. It helps when you win 10 games, 9 years in a row. That helps. But even early on in that, he had the Mr. February tag where he couldn't, win the big one. But still, Texas has always had a lot of booster influence, but you got to have that guy that I think can do that. It's not about we got to shut up these boosters, because they're not. They give the money to the schools. They're always going to want influence. It's not about, not everybody's Nick Saban where you can walk in there and say, we're doing this my way. You guys can get on or get out. That's what Auburn tried to do. How did that go for them? Didn't go great.
Not well.
We got to find somebody that can fit into that and try to make it work. It's a tough job. I mean, this is again why you talk to coaches now. I mean, being a head coach, coaching football is so small of a percentage of the job. Like, it is a people management job. Players, coaches, boosters, your AD, your sort of your 500 level fans, all that. You got to manage all that stuff. And then you got to coach a little football in the middle of all that as well. And I think that's a big part of the job, because those people are the people that control your fate, for better or worse. Usually worse, but sometimes better.
More times than not worse, no question. David Ubben, senior writer with The Athletic, covering college football. You can follow him on Twitter at David Ubben. David, thanks for taking some time with us today, man. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
We're going to take a break here. When we come back, Wild and Wacky Wednesday, the weirdest and wildest news from across the world, right here on Main Street Sports Today. Mid-Tennessee Bone and Joint treats your orthopedic injuries and existing conditions. Our trained physicians will get you back in the game faster. Contact us at 931-381-2663 or www.mtbj.net. Hey folks, while we take a quick break from the show, I want to tell you about our friends over at Custom Stone Handlers in downtown Columbia. Ed Rich and his team at Custom Stone Handlers believe in leadership. And outside of the military, our greatest leader building platform is sports. Custom Stone Handlers proudly encourages young people to get in the game, You can contact them today at 931-490-4990 or visit customstonehandlers.com.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, zioneagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's zioneagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
A game without a crowd is just a scrimmage. A performance without an audience is just a rehearsal. Without your presence, high school sports and the performing arts aren't possible. Ensure that these essential extracurricular activities continue to enrich the lives of students in Tennessee. Purchase a ticket to your local high school's game or performance.
This message presented by the TSSAA.
Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Maury County Schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic injuries, and our Ortho Quick walk-in service lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net. We're back in Main Street Sports today, presented by Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint. Great stuff there from David Ubben.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was... That's why we bring these people on. We've had a couple of great guests today.
We have. It's been a good day.
Yeah,
it's been a good day. Well, it's time to do a little wild and wacky, and so I want to pull this up because one, it's one of the wildest things I think I've ever seen. And so, see, can you see that there? I'm trying to go full screen with it.
Yes, it says it's loading now, I think.
It's taking forever. Let's see here. Let's watch this man blow up his backyard.
I think I've seen this before.
I'm not sure exactly what he's doing. He's because I've got some matches. I don't know if his poor dog is in the doghouse over here. Okay.
The dog's just looking at him like, "What are you doing?"
Like, sir.
What is that? Like a mole hole or something? Or what's he?
It could be does he have a septic tank, I wonder?
That's what I was thinking.
Good
Lord. Not no more. Oh my God.
Well, at some point in your life, you can pull that off now. You're bound to face one of the more frustrating problems of being a homeowner: critters digging holes and tunnels in your yard. Moles, groundhogs, whatever. That's what this guy has. And some people, they like to take a little more explosive approach. First of all, dressed in classic dad outfit of jorts, flip-flops, and a polo shirt. This guy's definitely from Florida, right?
Yeah, did you say flip-flops? I'm pretty sure you had those on.
Yeah, flip-flops and jorts. The yard explodes, especially, for a tiny space like that. He wasn't expecting it, given that the two dogs were just chilling with him. But what were you thinking? Did you go down to the fireworks store and ask for the biggest thing they had? Did you meet with the guy in the trench coat you found on Craigslist? Like, where did you get this idea? This is people are just dumb. And I don't understand how you get to this point in life. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know.
No, I don't think you are. I think it's everybody else, like you said, or the folks that are doing that, because it just seems a little reckless. But
I think that's telling us that it's time to get off the air. I don't know if it is or not.
All right.
A New York City man has been charged with smuggling 3 Burmese pythons in his pants at a U.S.-Canadian border crossing. Calvin Bautista, 36, accused of bringing the hidden snakes on a bus that crossed into northern New York on July 15th of 2018. Importation of Burmese pythons is regulated by an international treaty and federal regulations listing them as injurious to human beings. So there you go. The charge carries a potential for a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison and a fine as high of $250,000 just for some pythons.
Is it worth it?
Nope. So, no, thank you.
No, I'm good.
Anyway, we don't have much time, so let's go ahead and say farewell. I hate when that happens, but it's also good because that means we had a good guest right before.
Yeah.
So you guys come back with us tomorrow. We've got another fantastic show lined up for you. We will be making our picks. Tito, let's double A. You want to know who's going to go to the state championship games?
Ask us.
We're going to tell you tomorrow. We're also going to talk to Seth Anderson of Columbia Academy, who has a little unfinished business to take care of out in Jackson. So should be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great one. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us here on Main Street Sports Day, presented by Mid Tennessee Bone and Joint. See you guys tomorrow.